this is Josh with Clinic Vitafi Life. We are going to go over what is included in the testosterone cypionate package from the pharmacy and how to get started with your testosterone treatment. So you're going to receive a few things in your package. So obviously the needles and syringes, alcohol wipes, and then of course the testosterone itself. For men, it will be a 10 milliliter vial, and typically for women, it's a 1 milliliter vial. So let's go ahead and dive in and talk about each of these. So first off, you want to pull out the testosterone cypionate in the vial, and you'll notice that it has this cap on top. It might be a different color. And by the way, if the liquid inside for the medication is a different color, like a clear color, that's totally fine. It just depends on the pharmacy and how they compound it. What we want to do is break off this cap, and then we take an alcohol wipe and wipe the rubber seal to make sure that it's sanitized and ready for your first draw. Now, normally I will only wipe it the first time. If you do want to wipe it with an alcohol wipe each time before you draw out the medication, that's fine too, but it's worked for me just to do it once on the first time. That will be prepped and ready, so you just put that aside. And I typically store it inside the box at room temperature. You don't need to store this in the fridge, just somewhere safe where kids or no one else will get a hold of it. So let's talk about what's included with the needle syringes. Now, first we're going to talk about the men. For men, you will receive your syringe, alcohol wipe, a draw needle, and then an injection needle. The difference between the two, so your draw needle is typically an 18 gauge needle like you see here, and that's because it's a thicker needle, so it's easier to draw out the medication from the vial. And then the injection needle is a 25 gauge needle, which is a thinner needle, and that makes it a lot more easy to insert it into the body and inject the medication. The difference for women on their package is that they might not receive the draw needle, the 18 gauge. They will just receive the 25 gauge needle. What happens as a female, you are not drawing out that much medication, and so you don't need that thick needle to draw out a lot more of the medication. Now, the other thing for females, just a side note, the brand of these syringes, as you can see here, is called CarePoint. And CarePoint is a glue or lock syringe. I'm going to show you in a second how it works. Sometimes you might receive from the pharmacy a tuberculin syringe. That's the brand name, tuberculin. And in that case, you cannot remove the needle head off of the syringe. It's just one needle head, and typically that's the 25 gauge for the injection. Okay, so let's dive into the next part.
Okay, now we're going to show you how to properly draw out the medication. And in this scenario, we're going with the CarePoint brand for the syringe. So we remove the syringe out of the wrapping. And if you receive the tuberculin brand syringe, just remember you won't be able to remove the needle head, which is totally fine. We're going to still show you how to properly draw out to your dosage line based off of what the doctor prescribed you. So in this scenario, we do have a draw needle head, so we're going to pull that out. And it's a twisting method that you twist the needle on and lock it into place. Now, how I draw out the medication is I turn the vial upside down, I remove the cap, and I will use this part of my palm to guide the needle up inside the rubber seal inside the vial, and then I hold it with my ring finger and I will pull out the medication down to the line based off of my dosage that's prescribed by the doctor. So let's say it's 0.5. I'll pull it out to right about there. And if there's any bubbles, you can flick it and you can push the medication back up a little bit and then pull it back down. But that way you don't have a lot of bubbles. A few of them is okay, but you want to try and get rid of as many as you can. It's not the end of the world if you do have some though. You pull out of the rubber seal, you're ready to put the cap back on, and then switch over to the injection needle head. Now, one little tip, when you do pull out the medication into the syringe, there will be some medication trapped in this needle head. So if you remove this needle head, it will have a little bit in there. So one little trick that's worked for me that I do is before I remove this needle head, I'll pull down just a little bit. And that removes all the medication out of the needle head. Then I put the cap on, twist off, set that to the side, and then I will use the injection head, the 25 gauge, twist on, and then what I do is I just take it very slowly and go back up to the 0.5 line, and you want to make sure you're careful not to let any medication come out of the tip. but you'll see it go back up into this needle head. That way you're not wasting any medication on the previous draw needle head. Now let's talk about the line that you draw out to. So typically for men, if you're doing 1 dosage a week, check your prescription, but it's typically down here at the 1.0 milliliter once per week. If your follow-up lab results come back high, the doctor might lower it and go down to 0.8 once a week. So you want to check your prescription and the dosage that the doctor is recommending you. If it's 0.4 twice a week for men, then you'll draw out to the 0.4 and you'll do that injection twice a week. Now for females, this is where a little bit of confusion can happen. If your dosage is 0.05 milliliters twice per week, that does not mean we go down to the 0.5 line. That's way too high. 0.05 is actually halfway to the 0.1 line. So 0.05 milliliters halfway there. And that's if you're doing it twice a week. If the doctor prescribed you 0.1 once per week, then you pull down to 0.1 milliliter line and you just do that injection once per week. But 0.04, 0.05 is actually right in that area versus down here at the 0.4, 0.5. So make sure that you're properly pulling out to the right line and not getting confused with 0.5 or 0.4 twice a week if it is that amount. So once you have it pulled out to the right line and you have your injection needle on, now we're ready to administer the injection, and we'll go over that in the next video.